Once the client is happy with the final cut, which maybe more often than not is about 3 minutes before it's due on the air, then
that never. No, I'm not having that.
Well, not
That
literally
never
3
happens.
minutes.
That never happens.
The time scales are getting shorter. Like,
Well, there's a different way to phrase that, which is we
We're
work to
getting
tight
better.
deadlines.
Don't have on the table, Matthew. I'll distract you.
all right. No, well, it's not about that. It's about fucking. The one thing you'll hear on the recording will be that reverberating on the table. You won't hear us.
Did you just say? Did you say some F language there?
When?
Just 2 seconds ago.
Don't know. Did I?
Oh, we're allowing that. I don't think I can talk. I don't think I can communicate effectively without swearing.
Just have to beep it out.
Oh, allowed to swear.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm not me if I'm not.
What's the difference? We'll either beep it out or. But there's no point trying to censor yourself.
It's a lot of work beeping.
It's funny though, isn't it?
So where we're in the process now, we're kind of fact-finding, research, needs, wants. That then develops into a script. Quite often is what we might start with, in a loose concept, and we're still on paper at this stage, aren't we?
Yeah.
This is
Definitely.
still ideas being sketched down. It's scripts being typed up. It's maybe rough images, storyboard, just trying to kind of pull stuff together to see what works.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of, I think people can quite easily imagine what that kind of looks like. And obviously in that process as well, we're constantly kind of feeding back to the client and saying, what do you think of that? Like we think that's got some legs. We might have a few different concepts, and we don't close the door, do we?
Well, no. And usually if you've got more than one concept, inevitably the client says, oh yeah, I really like that and I like that. So can we just take that bit from that and put that together and can we just mash those three things together? But,
And you're like, well, that one's a Western and that one's set in space.
Yeah, but I've always wanted to do a space Western.
So where we're going from there, then the client's kind of, they're involved in this creative process. I've talked about there's a script going down there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now, as we're writing that script, we're starting to say things about your business. You're the biggest. You sell the biggest swimming pools on planet Earth. There's nobody cheaper than me. I am the best company in the world.
3 things we would never put in a script, but carry on.
Why are red lights flashing in the office, Matthew, when you start to see these claims going down?
It would never get that far. I'd stamp it out before that. Well, I mean, that's part of the initial conversation. If anyone, most people have an idea that something needs to get rubber stamped basically to be on TV. They may or may not know who Clearcast are. They may or may not have any understanding of the process. I suppose in some ways it depends on if they've done radio specifically before, but then frankly it's a lot easier to clear a script for radio and a lot quicker usually. So there's just a general understanding that someone has to approve this and that if you're going to say something it has to be backed up, which is ultimately why adverts in this country in particular are very heavily scrutinized and therefore ultimately very trusted, because it's impossible pretty much to lie in a television advert in this country. But that's usually part of the initial discussion. Obviously, as part of the timeline discussion, I'm giving people a bit of an outline to say, well, usually from this point to being ready for TV, it's X amount of weeks, depending on what I think the advert's going to be. I kind of tail that a little bit. I used to kind of tell everyone it was 8 to 12 weeks, but it depends now. As far as those kind of claims go, we're just not writing scripts that have those kind of claims. If they want to say they're the big, well, we're working on one now where there's a claim that they are the biggest shop in a certain area. Now, we haven't written that. This is one where we're just working on some of the post-production. We've just been sent footage and I was asked to assess it and say what's going to be the claims. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, the problem is what they actually mean, because they're in fashion, what they actually mean is we're the biggest clothes shop. But that's not what they've said. They said we're the biggest shop. So to stand that up, you've either got to prove that you're the biggest in terms of sales or that you're physically the biggest. But because you haven't qualified it by saying fashion, it's going to be almost impossible, because I guarantee in that city, which is Liverpool, there are going to be bigger shops.
Well, the question here is, you've mentioned Clearcast there. Who are Clearcast and why do they exist? And you've kind of hinted on the process there, but like quickly, what is the process with Clearcast?
They're an independent body that's funded by the broadcasters. They exist to approve adverts to go on TV. They work to the broadcasting code, the BCAP code, all the rules and regulations inherent in that. So basically, they work with us to get a script approved and say, right, if you make that advert as you've written it there, that's okay for TV. We've accepted at that point, Clearcast have accepted from us at that point, any evidence we've given to prove that they're the biggest clothes shop in Liverpool, or whatever the claim is. So that's why they're there, and they're there ultimately to protect the advertiser from problems, because if the campaign goes out and people complain, they'll complain to the ASA, the Advertising Standards Authority. And the first thing the ASA will do is they'll go to Clearcast and say, I want to see all the information that you got in the pre-production phase.
So just to put in there, when people are making these claims in the script, we're putting that script into Clearcast. They're reading it. Usually they're giving you a list back saying, right, that claim you need to prove that that's true for each one.
Yeah.
And to prove that, we need to go to the client and say, right, you need evidence here. And usually the evidence just means writing a letter, just holding up the claims and giving them data. Sometimes there's different forms and stuff that I need to fill in if you're going to do.
Yeah, it depends what the advert is, but like a claim could be, this product is available now at this price and it used to be at that price and it's only available at this price until that date. So in that case, you might end up, or you will end up, filling in a retail substantiation form to go along with your letter and everything else, because that's just a standardized form that they use for sale adverts. But on the other hand, you might have an advert that basically says, we're a shop on the street corner and we're open Monday to Friday 9 till 5. That's a claim as well. But if we then submit a letter signed by the person that owns the shop that says, I can confirm that I'm open Monday to Friday 9 till 5, Clearcast say, that's enough for us, rubber stamped. Now, in that case, if they're actually open Monday till Thursday and someone complains that they've advertised that they're open on Friday and they're not, then the ASA will go to Clearcast and say, right, show us what evidence you got, and then they'll show them the letter, and then the ASA will go, well, this is now, we've established this was factually incorrect, so now I ban thee. That advert is banned.
Well, that sounds like quite a scary process if you've not done it before. But I think one of the things that YourFilm does very well, and again, because of the experience that in particular you've had dealing with Clearcast, is that that script doesn't even get to that stage. It won't go to Clearcast because you know exactly what they'll come back with and ask for evidence-wise. So that I'm sure the scripts that come in from us, you've already spoken to the client, pinpointed a couple of things that they need to kind of give you evidence for, but it never goes further. Like it's never a script that's just got crazy statements like Kevin off there, because you would never let it get to that stage.
No, absolutely not. Like that's a key part of what we do, is we write the script or edit the script if a client happens to have written it, but as I say, that's once in a blue moon, and we do so with the knowledge of what you can and can't say, and if you're going to say something, what you're going to need. So there's a couple we're working on now where we said with the client during the script phase, because they were quite involved in changing some of the voiceover lines and therefore the claims, and we at every stage said, well, that's okay, you can say that if you can provide this information to prove that claim.
Also, if you watch TV commercials, and quite often you see the small white writing at the bottom of the frame, they're called legal superimposed titles, which are usually only there because Clearcast has said that's extra clarifying information that the viewer needs to know to accompany the claims that you're making. So even when we're writing a script, quite often we'll say, you're probably going to need legal super, as we call them, you're probably going to need a legal super there to just clarify this point.
Well, there's one we're working on at the minute, which is in the finance industry, and I wrote a super in the script, and the client said, oh no, we want the super to say this, and I had to say, well, no, it's going to say this because that's what it has to say. You know,
The absolute classic one is if you deliver products, and Clearcast will always say, well, do you deliver to the Scottish Highlands? No, we don't. well,
super.
There you
Exclusions
go.
apply.
There you go. Got you. But it's. I mean, we're joking about it, and Marc's right. It does sound quite scary, but it's a good thing because TV is the most trusted medium in the UK and a lot of in some other countries. Sorry, because there's a lot of countries where there's no such thing as a Clearcast, and you can just put a commercial on TV and say whatever you want. You could lie on TV. You cannot lie on a TV commercial in this country. It's extremely hard to.
We've literally made an advert where at the start of it, the person turns to the camera because the setup was he was filming an advert within the advert. So he delivers his line, and then he turns to our camera and says, I can only say that because it's true. Mm-hmm. And that is true.
So I've got a stat for you here, boys.
Come on then. Hit me with the digits.
In the UK, TV advertising is by far and away the most trusted medium, with 42% of UK respondents placing it top of the list.
43% I had according to my stat. I think you've dropped a percentage point there.
And number 2 is newspapers with 13. That's quite a big gap. So if you're looking at advertising on TV, that's obviously a big pull, is that you know that viewers that see it on there will believe the claims that you're making because you've had to prove them with an inch of their life.
It's not just that. It genuinely, to get back to what we were talking about before, the perception of the expensive TV is not necessarily the truth. But obviously, if you're a big brand doing a big national campaign, you spend a lot of money. But in general, because of that, there is a general assumption that if you're on TV, there's something about you. You've got something about you because you can afford to be on TV. So that is a trust builder to begin with, because you're obviously established and you've got, some credentials basically. But that plus the very tight scrutiny on the actual scripts and stuff, then it doesn't surprise me that's the most trusted.
TV is also the medium most likely to make brands famous, according to 66% of the UK population. And I'm pretty sure we could all reel off TV commercials that we've watched probably 25 years ago. So I can believe that one as well. Just look at brands like Moonpig. Their policy was just be on TV constantly for a few years. Everyone will know the name and then just stop. Turn off the tap and it worked. Lovely for them. Right, so where we're up to then? Clearcast, I think that's got Clearcast covered. I think
as much as anyone actually cares, yeah, that's
well, it's kind of.
Let's be honest, it's the dull admin part of the job, and it's the bit that stifles some of the fun because you can't really say that. You've got to say this, or you've got to qualify that way. Like that's what it is. But if you look at it the other way, it is actually there ultimately to give you a good, strong advert.
So coming back to that, and EE as being like the commercial that's out there now, or two of them, you've got a robot up on a mountain hill shaving somebody controlled from a house somewhere, and you've got another one advert where you've got them landing an airplane. So they did that then.
Yeah,
that went through.
They must have done.
Otherwise, it's not like a flight of fancy much that
I'll
it
put
can
it.
be.
I'll put it another way. If you go and turn your telly on tonight and you see an advert for L'Oreal mascara, it's going to say in the legal super, this advert was filmed with eyelash inserts.
Oh.
Because that was a thing that was complained about a few years ago, that it wasn't just the mascara, the actual eyelashes were being plopped up with fake eyelashes. So that became a standing thing, that if you're going to show a mascara advert, because that's what everyone does, they put the fake eyelashes in to pump them up. So if a mascara advert has to tell you, actually these aren't all this person's real eyelashes, and the E adverts don't say something to the effect of, we didn't really do this, then they did it, yeah.
Amazing.
We have had clients that have changed their messaging because of a super that was going to be imposed on that particular script, and we sorted that out at the script stage, which saved a lot of heartache, later down the line. So
there's also the occasional instance, and I can't think of an example off the top of my head, unfortunately, where we'll suggest a super that doesn't actually have to be there, but in being there, it actually further boosts the confidence in the advert, if you see what I mean.
Yeah, because people see it as a sign of it's just the text of truth, isn't it? And they've been, kind of they've had to put it there, but they've put it there.
Or to
it's
put it
fine.
another way, to do a direct comparison with American adverts, you'll see one of those adverts and they'll have 10 lines of 3.5 point font legal text that flashes up for 3 seconds, because that's the other thing. Supers have to be held on screen in this country for a certain amount of time, depending on how many words there are. So the point is, everything is designed to make sure that you as a consumer have every opportunity to read that information and understand what the caveat might be to the claim, as opposed to, say, America, where they flash it up for a second, and even if you paused it, it's so small you couldn't read it. So whatever it says, and it might be perfectly innocuous, might just be more information, but because of how it's presented, I, as a viewer, just think, well, I don't believe it. Whatever it is they're actually saying, I don't believe it, because I've seen that half a second flash up of 3
and it
seconds.
fills the full screen.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of information.
Like, genuinely, particularly car adverts over there, you'll get a huge block of text, but it'll only show up for about 3 seconds. There's no, it's not designed to be read. It's just designed to tick whatever legal box they've got,
Mm-hmm.
But very much different in this country.
We've got next there, Kevin.
Well, should we move on to the next stage of our process then? Where do they go from there? So script's cleared. Clearcast say, yeah, script's good. We're happy with that. You've got your evidence in. That's approved. I suppose then we're coming into the fun part of the whole shebang.
In our case, usually we're doing 2 things at once anyway. So usually as we're clearing the script to some degree, if it's a live action shoot, then we're planning it. Sometimes you can shoot something even while you're waiting for the script to be cleared. Depends on what the concept is and whether it's voiceover or people speaking on screen. More often than not, if the advert is animated or motion graphics, then you can get started on putting something together. So usually by the time the script's cleared, we're either already underway or we're heavily into pre-production and getting ready to shoot. So as an example, we're shooting an advert next week. The script will probably be cleared by the time we shoot it, but if it's not the end of the world, because there's only kind of one issue outstanding at the minute, which is a voiceover point. So we'll either substantiate it and stick with a line, or we'll change the line, but either way it's going to get recorded after the fact.
Anything to add to that, Marc?
Well, I suppose that's it. It's coming to YourFilm. It's not just the filming. We do the animation as well, and obviously the different styles of animation. So whatever concept creative that we come up with, we can produce. So yeah, not every advertisement needs to be filmed. Not every one has to be animated. There could even be a mix. So yeah, it's interesting to kind of sometimes present 2 ideas almost in contradiction, I suppose, in how they look, really.
It's quite nice that we've got that freedom in our company, that we're not limited by how we're going to produce the thing. We've got a very talented team, so it could be, well, I suppose our kind of work speaks for itself. You've got like such a different looking mix of projects, and I think that's really testament to the fact that when it's at the start of the process, we shape it into what it needs to be. You couldn't look at our work and say, well, yeah, it's they're just making the same ad over and over again. It's always kind of tailored around what that client needed. And our clients are very different industries, very different audiences. Some are products, some are services, worldwide, in different localities and stuff. So yeah, I love that about what we do, because we're never scared or
the fun bit, as you kind of hinted at.
Yeah, it can be fun. Can be, can't it?
Yeah, sometimes.
Well, it all just goes back to the fact that, yeah, we've created a team and put ourselves in a position where at every step of the way, all we're focused on is what's the best route to the outcome that the client wants. So if that's a small campaign with a very simple advert that's made up of stills, not that we do that very often, but if that's what it is, we'll make it. And if it's, you know, a high-end advert with integrated CG effects and, you know, needs to go national, we'll make that and plan that too.
So do we need to go into a lot of detail about the production and post-production phase, or is that something we think people already kind of understand?
I think that's probably the stuff that people understand, maybe the sexy part of.
Well, that's usually when you see the clients.
The thing
that
people don't understand is they assume we're going to show up with about 50 people and 3 trucks worth of equipment, and usually we're not. And then on the other hand, they also assume that because it's a 30-second advert, it's going to take about 2 hours to shoot. Those are the two opposing ideas that people tend to have, is that we're showing up with this massive crew and we're going to do it in 2 minutes. And neither's true.
Yeah.
And in fact, we're talking to someone today about the ad we're shooting next week, and we're talking about behind the scenes, and the beauty of the behind the scenes that we'll do for them is it really helps you see, like, oh well, that's what I'm seeing in the frame, that's what the nice polished advert looks like. But in reality, here with the 7 people stood behind the camera with, you know, one of them holding a flag stand or whatever, and just it's interesting to people.
Yeah, one of them sat down.
It's still just about borderline interesting to me.
It's I find that people don't find it glamorous at all once they're there. It's once you kind of see how things are kind of stuck together behind the scenes. On the shoot I'm talking about here, like this one we're planning next week, I know that a lot of the time setting up is going to be people taping black fabric to walls and across windows and stuff.
Then you have the clients who watch you do that and go, oh, you're blocking out all that lovely sunlight. Yeah, it's sunny now, but in 3 hours when we need the same shot and it's going to be raining and grey, then that's the problem, isn't it?
Yeah, if I had my way on a shoot, it would always be like, right, keep the client in a nice warm room with a nice cup of coffee, and then after they've been there for 2 hours.
Is that
or
a sealed,
right,
soundproof room?
Quickly come in. We're just about to hit record. Look at it now. Yeah, action, cut. Right, go back in the room. There's nothing else to say.
The truth of it is, when the clients are on set, particularly for a television advert, the only thing that matters is when they actually see the monitor, and then usually that, because what they've seen is how it's made behind the scenes, when they actually then look at the monitor and see the shot happen after 2 hours of prep, they go, oh, it looks great, doesn't it? Looks great.
Oh, yeah.
And the post-production side of things is, again, you know, I guess a lot of people have seen video editing. And
well, some adverts are entirely post-production.
True. And again, post-production, obviously a mix of the talent we've got in our team and obviously what you can do with software these days. I think some of the stuff we've done in TV commercials for the budgets that we've got as well, would never have dreamed that we'd be able to do these kinds of things. You just click the button, don't you? It says make advert. Well, in a lot of ways, there's little parts of it that I get in there. I mean, I'm at the point where I'm kind of resisting that a bit. You don't want it to be easy, Marc, do you?
No.
What we're going to complain about?
Just be easier.
Yeah, if anyone could do it, there's no fun in that, is there? So,
and I think explaining that process there does, you know, we get it quite a lot. You know, everyone's is walking around with a device in the pocket there. They could go out and film something, and the software there is to make it look good and sound good, but it's all those other things that we've talked about in the production, what needs to be thought about before production, all those considerations that really take it up that level, what's needed for everything that we supply, really, obviously broadcast.
Well, it's funny you should say that, because I do think we might be at a tipping point, only time will tell, but because of the lockdown, the idea of adverts that were made remotely suddenly became acceptable. Like, people didn't question it. It was just like, oh well, this is now an advert that's clearly been shot, you know, an influencer has shot it themselves on their own phone, or it's been shot over Zoom, or clearly the audio's been recorded over not in a studio, let's put it that way. And that became the norm for a while, for obvious reasons. But it seems to be carrying on, and it seems to be, generally speaking, the younger, by which I mean the business themselves, not their audience, the younger brands, subscription services, little fashion brands, stuff like that. There seems to be, to my surprise, still a relatively high number of, frankly, technically poorly produced adverts.
Mm-hmm.
And that might continue because it's sort of been accepted by the audience. But my suspicion is that it won't, because no matter how good the content might be in terms of the sales message, it doesn't feel like a television advert.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't feel polished. In the same way that British films 20 years ago looked awful all the time. Because they're just, a combination, I suppose, of the available talent and the available equipment. They all had a televisual look.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now it's almost impossible, even with an iPhone, not to shoot something that looks cinematic with depth of field and everything. So, it'll be interesting to see what happens, because I say it might be that, these kind of, let's call them self-shot adverts, get more popular, become more the norm. But I suspect that it all goes back to what I was talking about before. There's something about putting a well-produced TV advert up that feels like an advert, feels like something I can trust in.
Yeah, I think, don't want to get too nostalgic, but TV adverts were so good when I was a kid. There were just so much more character. Obviously, a lot of that you just couldn't do now for different reasons. I mean, we're talking about Clearcast, so even just that side of things has probably changed it. But yeah, there was more of an art, I think, to them.
If you go back to the very first adverts in the 50s, I mean, maybe it's not the 50s, maybe it was after that, but
I thought you was going to ask me to name one there I'd seen.
But I'm talking about when people would literally there being a sort of a Blue Peter studio type setup, and the person that cast to play the housewife would walk onto the camera and then talk at the camera for about 3 minutes about Ajax soap or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. The form's always evolving, but I don't think we've gone past there was definitely bigger budget adverts when we were younger. Overall, I would say, but that's a combination of a lot of things, isn't it? I mean, these days you can shoot something in a studio with the right setup that makes it look like you were in the desert or whatever. So it's always evolving, but I think the thing that's always the same is the only thing that's really continued to change is I think everything's getting a bit shorter and sharper, and sub 30-second lengths are probably more common now.
Well, yeah,
20s, 15s, 10s.
Short retention spans now.
6 seconds, so you can't skip it if it's online.
So I think we've tooted our horn enough in terms of the production, so I will kind of skip over how we manage our post-production cycle and how we're all the fantastic ways that the clients can interact with our edits and stuff. And just go on to okay, so the edit's approved by the client, they've watched it. Obviously, they love it.
Well, obviously, we've also had the point where they were on set with you the whole day, but then they ask you, "We not get a shot of this," whatever this was. You got that part as well.
Yeah,
that's fair enough. That's the old advert post-production bingo card.
Yeah. What happens after that? How does it get on? How does it get on TV?
What happens after the client says they like it?
So I've got I mean, we're old enough as well where at the end of that process there was a tape. There isn't a tape anymore. So what happens to the commercial?
Marc remembers tapes. You're up your eyeballs in tapes at one point, weren't you? Which is a lot of tapes because you're tall. Once the client is happy with the final cut, which maybe more often than not is about 3 minutes before it's due on the air, then
that never. No, I'm not having that.
Well, not literally.
That never happens. That never happens.
The time scales are getting shorter.
There's a different way to phrase that, which is we work to tight deadlines. But
once the client approves the advert, we then have to show it to Clearcast so that they can compare it against what we told them we're going to make and make sure it's the same. Now, there is a bit of scope for it to have changed during post-production, but again, that's where our experience comes in. We're not going to allow any changes that are going to cause problems. So, for instance, a line in a voiceover might change slightly, or a visual might change, but we're always kind of guiding that process and saying, actually, you can't do that or you can't do that because that's going to cause a problem. So basically, you put the advert in a Clearcast, they take 24 hours usually to compare it against what you said you were going to do, and as long as it matches up, they rubber stamp it, and then you send it to the broadcasters, which we do through a third-party platform called Peach. And quite often it's just going to one or two broadcasters. As a campaign we're about to do, that's going to, I think, 11 different ones, but it's the same thing. You just upload your video, take them all in and send them off. We get charged for that. Obviously that's part of the budget, but that's it really.
Yeah, so just like magic, just goes through those digital internet pipes, goes to the channels, and then you go home, sit and watch TV, and there it is, your beautiful commercial.
Unless it's Sky Smart, in which case you've got to try and catch it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, no schedule for those, is there? Okay, so I think we should probably end this one here because there's still some stuff that we're going to get through, but we've gone through for quite a while there. So we'll pick up the ones we haven't covered there, which include, well, does TV advertising still work? Do you still get a good return on investment from it? Don't answer now.
No.
Don't answer now.
Don't.
Ruined.
No, it doesn't. That's why we persist in making them. One day we'll make one that works.
And then, a few more techie things like what's an impression, what's a TVR, can I be on after Coronation Street? Probably more to do with the media plan side of things. And Sky Ad Smart as well, which I think is probably a good topic to talk about because that is more kind of the direction that TV advertising.
Well, that's the thing, because it's not, although it's Ad Smart now, in a couple of months' time, it's going to be Ad Smart and ITVX, which are two separate things entirely, but offer the same capability to hyper target.
That's probably a great time to talk about it then, when that happens.
Okay, so do you want to play out again, Matthew?
Well, we never did an intro, technically. Should I do an intro first?
No, because then I've got to edit it then. But I love editing. Well, if well,
I'll tell you what I'll do by way of outro.
What you're going to do it in 9 minutes time.
I'll plug the fact that we've got 2 articles on our website, and basically, I suppose to some degree, we've kind of covered the first of the article today. So if people want to actually read a bit more about the process, then go on our website. There's a 2-part series about television advertising, what the process is, what the creative styles and all that kind of stuff is. So that's what they can do while they wait for the next episode when we'll be back. I don't know.
Yeah, and what's
same time next week, is it?
What's that?
What time does this podcast go out?
Tell that URL. Well, I've got it on my sleeve there.
The URL of our website.
Yeah.
You want to go to your.film. That's it. That's the full address. There's no .com. Your.film, and then click on the learn page.
I like the fact you didn't even wait for that question, even though there was no one to ask it.
Well, it's the same. It's like over the years, it's like Matthew with 2 T's on the phone. M-A-T-T.
Yeah.
You just know what you're going to get asked.
Okay, so thank you for listening, watching, and see you on the next one.
All right. See you later.